Okay, guys, I think we are now live on the site. I want to welcome you guys to another weekly Conversations with Commodores. And the gentleman who's with me is somebody I've wanted to have a conversation with for a long time. You guys remember him, Kurt Page, who was quarterback in the late 70s, early 80s. And Kurt, thank you for making some time for me this evening.
Absolutely. I love the conversations with Commodores and just have been watching. Look forward to seeing Coach Watson Brown next week. So you're doing an outstanding job. This is a really good job.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping and praying that he will have mastered Zoom by then. We made a run at it a couple of weeks ago, and let's just say we're going to try it again.
Yeah, he'll get it. Maybe get somebody to help him. Get his wife to help him. Somebody.
Well, let's hope so. But Kurt, there's already a whole bunch of folks. I want to tell you who's rolling in. Gary Veach, T. Banks, Ed DeMesa, Rock Batten. There's going to be a whole bunch rolling through here, and I'll let you know when they make their appearances. But for guys who, I'm sure everybody here knows Kurt, knows all of the awesome things that he did on and off the field. But let's start where we are in the present for you, Kurt. You're at Fort Dale Academy. Tell folks what you're doing, what's going on in your world, and then we'll work our way back.
Well, I'm presently the head of school at Fort Dale Academy here in Greenville, Alabama. We started June the 1st and had a great first semester. And then the second semester was great. And then the coronavirus hit, and we've been doing distance learning. And it's just been real frustrating for a lot of our folks because in a small town, actually, there's a lot of our families that don't have internet out in the countries, so out in the country. So it's been hard to navigate those waters, but they have all really bought in and tried to get it done. And we got 2 more weeks of school. But I'm the head of school there, got a great teaching staff. I got coaches there that are veterans and seasoned, and they do a good job. And then I finished up my doctoral degree, hopefully in a couple of weeks. Chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4 has been submitted. And so now I'm ready to defend.
Excellent. Well, like you always were prepared on the field, I know you'll be prepared in the classroom or in the meeting room coming up. So that's good luck and best wishes with that. Kurt, do you participate? Are you part of any of the sports program at Fort Dale Academy right now?
I'm the head of school, so no, I'm not coaching on the field. And basically just, as Dr. Crenson, one of my mentors, said, your scoreboard just changed a little bit, Now you're keeping score with parents and families and alumni and really trying to balance all those factors that you got to really, dial into and be compassionate with those folks, especially during these times. So that's what I'm doing. But no, I'm not coaching on the field. It was hard in the fall at first to see the guys out there playing. But I have so much responsibilities and looking after so many things that I really didn't miss it one time.
Well, I was going to say, there's only so many hours in a given day. There's only so many good brain cells to use before you got to go to sleep for the next day. So I understand that, but I know your passion for sports is still there and probably contribute when asked from time to time. Excuse me. Well, let's back up from there. Let's take it back to childhood. Where did you grow up, and how did you end up at Father Ryan before you made your college decision?
Yes, well, I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee on North Wilson Boulevard, right there in West Nashville, across from NBA. So I grew up there and playing football and baseball, basketball, and we played all the time. Actually, a few times, Tommy Owen, the great Tommy Owen coach for NBA, he ran us off the field many times. We'd go out there on Saturday, over the fence and go play on that they had a real nice stadium. They still have a nice stadium, but it was really nice back then. So I went through Ransom Elementary, and then I K through 4, and then 5th and 6th grade went to Head. Was one of the few kids that stayed in the public system. I went there for 2 years, and then Washington Junior High, and then finished up my junior high days at West End Junior High, 8th and 9th grade. And then from 9th grade, had the opportunity to go to Father Ryan High School. I had 2 older brothers that went there, and so they had a great experience. And I had 5 brothers, so the top 3, my oldest 3 brothers, they all went to Hillsboro. And so, it was either I go to Hillsboro or Father Ryan, and I chose to go to Father Ryan.
Mm-hmm. And multi-sports, I assume, were part of your daily activities each year. Now, when you got into high school, did you have any desires to play a sport in college, or when did that kind of get into your mindset?
That's a great question, but my favorite sport was basketball. And when I was a sophomore, my sophomore summer, after playing one season at Father Ryan, I got invited to a 5-star camp in Washington, D.C., actually Bethesda, Maryland, University of Maryland. And their coach was Lefty Driesell. And I went there and we were selected to go and participated. And when I was participating, I really wanted to play college basketball. And I did play football and I did play baseball, but I had a passion for basketball growing all the way up. Well, I get to the camp, and I'll never forget this. I got to the camp, and I'm out there playing with guys. And back then, there was no internet. So you couldn't Google guys, see who they were. And the first day, I had to guard a little bitty left-handed African-American guy. And I didn't know who he was. And the second day, I had to guard a guy that was a little bit stockier, a little bit bigger, and he had blonde hair, and he's right-handed, Well, I called my dad after the second day, and I said, Dad, I need to keep my options open because I can't guard. If I can't guard these guys here, I can't play, Division I basketball. Well, and so I called him, and then Lefty Driesell, they offered me then. And back then you could sign right at your senior year. You could start signing multiple. You could sign multiple. We didn't have a national letter of intent. You could sign in multiple sports at multiple universities and multiple conferences. So he had offered me. And I said, I appreciate it. And, I didn't turn it down. I just said, I'm going to keep my options open. And so he kept recruiting me. And so then I learned to find out about a year later that the left-hander was John Lucas. And I didn't know him, but I saw him in a summer program. He played for the Houston Rockets, fantastic player. And then the right-handed guy was Brad Davis, played for the Dallas Mavericks. These guys were already in the league. And I was out there as a, 16, 17-year-old, evaluating myself against them. Boy, I wish we had Google then. I could have Googled those guys and found out, well, he's playing in the NBA, He's playing for the Mavericks, he's playing for the Rockets. But so it really challenged me to get better, in basketball, which also led me to get better in baseball and also in football. And we had some great coaches at Father Ryan, and I had some great guys I went to school with in high school. And it was this band of brothers, and we had a great time. And we just really, I was at the old Father Ryan on Elliston Place. And so we used to walk on Friday nights. We'd walk over to the stadium and get ready to play at Vanderbilt. We played, that was our home site. And so that was really, really exciting back in the day.
Well, as you're leading into your senior year, what type of offense did you have at Father Ryan, and what were you expecting your senior year to evolve to?
That's a great question. We'd worked all summer, throwing the ball, and actually I never played in the shotgun. I just wish I was playing nowadays. I would just love it. But no, I was under center all the time. We always had a two-back. We're an I-formation team. Our tailback was an outstanding runner. He was one grade behind me. He's Jim Miller. He signed with University of Tennessee, played all 4 years there. Outstanding player for them as a running back. So we were more just a downhill running football team, a little play action. What my dad told me, gave me some really good advice. He said, son, the scouts, if they come, they may want to see you throw 8 or 10 passes. Our stats were like 8 for 10, 170, 2 touchdowns, that type of thing. So they didn't see me throw a lot. But in warm-ups, we would throw the deep corner route. We throw the post. We throw a dig route over the middle, just in warm-ups. And Coach Bill Derrick, my head coach, he kind of showed off throwing skills at that time. So, but we were really, a strong defensive team. As a starter, I was 24-3 at Father Ryan. So in my 2.5 years of start. And so I was really blessed. We lost back in the day. They had a state championship, but it was a clinic bowl. And we lost to Gallatin at Vanderbilt. And we lost them. And I actually got to play with Jeff Holt and Daryl Holt, some guys from that game, 2 years, next year, playing with Jeff Holt and Daryl Holt from Gallatin. That was really nice memories, but they put it on us that night.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to ask you, I know that the Holts, and I want to say Dwayne Jones, who's watching.
Arnez Perry.
Say again?
Arnez Perry, he was a receiver.
Okay. And what about, was maybe John Short? Was he a year or two behind those guys?
Calvin Short's son, Coach Son, John Short. He was a good center, good deep snapper. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was, I think, a year or two ahead of me, so I played with him for a year.
Right.
And, well, that's fun, because a couple of years later or a year later, you guys are on campus together. But before we get to there, talk to me a little bit about your recruiting process. I know that Watson was involved for a while, and then he left to go from Austin Peay. But tell us about that a little bit.
Well, back in the day, there were no limitations. So every weekend I would go to watch somebody play. I'd go watch Vanderbilt or Alabama or Tennessee. And I went to Ole Miss, saw them play a number of times, and also to Austin Peay and the Western Kentucky. So we were just busy traveling around seeing games. Well, my dad was always an Alabama fan. He loved Coach Bear Bryant. And so it got down to, he really wanted me to play for Alabama. And Coach Ken Donahue, I don't know if y'all remember him, but he's a defensive coordinator. And he recruited our area. He sat in our living room and said, guaranteed my dad that, hey, we're going to get out of that double, wishbone or the slot and get in there and start passing the ball. And they'd already had great quarterbacks like Bart Starr, Joe Namath, Kenny Stabler. He was my guy when I wore number 12. I loved it because he was number 12. But he guaranteed. So my dad said, okay. So I ended up signing with them. And I signed, back in the day, you could do stuff like this. I signed a football scholarship for a percentage. And then I was also a track athlete for a percentage. And so then being out of state, then I basically was going to live with Steve Mischilly. He was one of the quarterbacks and grad students. So I was going to live right by the stadium. And, Coach Bryant, as we look back on it, he had signed about 15 of us that were quarterbacks, And so Coach Watson Brown, he stayed after me all the way through at Austin Peay. And my dad said, I'm not going to let you sign there. And I said, Dad, why? He said, well, 3 of your older brothers went up there and played, and I just think you got more skills and you can go to a bigger level. That's what I appreciated. So I wanted to go play for Watson Brown at Austin Peay because he was running the smorgasbord offense. He was throwing the short passes, option, everything that all of us quarterback like doing, and getting more guys involved in the plays and having fun with that. So I didn't sign with him. So I signed that scholarship. And so it was not a full scholarship. So back then, if you didn't sign a full scholarship, sometime you could call and school could release you. So, I played basketball, followed around. Coach Brown kept recruiting me at Austin Peay. And I played baseball. He came around spring, still recruiting me. And then we were in the semifinals of the state baseball championship in Memphis, Tennessee, playing Christian Brothers. And so we had lost to them the first game. We beat them the second game. It was best 2 out of 3. And in the third game, we ended up losing. And Christian Brothers ends up winning the state championship. And so I'm on my way back home on the bus, depressed and sad. So I get in the house and everybody's excited. I'm like, why are y'all excited, Mom and Dad? There's no cell phones then. There's no way for me to know. They said, well, Dad said, we're going to be going to Vanderbilt in the morning. I said, what? In the morning? This was May 29th. Okay. And I said, what are you talking about, Dad? He said, you get a chance to play at Vanderbilt. You get a chance to play Alabama. They offered you a full ride, son. I said, get out of here. Because Coach Mack, he had already signed some other quarterbacks and signed some other guys. And I didn't know he had scholarship left. When Coach Brown got there, he made it a point within probably a day or two that he wanted to sign me. And they had a scholarship that came open, the 30th scholarship. They had 29 back then. You could sign 30, and one came open. And then that next morning, I had to go, but I had to do one thing before then. My dad said, you got to get Coach Bryant to release you from your partial. And I said, yes, sir, I'll do that. So I called his office, and it stuck with me the rest of the time. I've always coached, and I've always been a teacher and administrator. That you take those phone calls from anyone that you coaching or that's under your student, And so I called him, and Coach Brown said, hey, what do you need, Paige? And so he ended up saying, what do you need? I said, Coach Bryant, Vanderbilt has offered me a full ride, and my dad, we talked about it, and it's my hometown. It's right down the street. I lived 2 miles from the stadium growing up, and so I'm going to go there. And he said, he was quiet, and I was like, oh man, he's not going to let me out of this. And then he said, boy, I said, yes, sir. He said, if you were my son, I would tell you to sign with Vanderbilt because it's a great opportunity, great education, and you get to play us. And I went, oh, I see. The year before they beat Vanderbilt 66-3. Johnny Musso, Stedman Shealy, all those guys, they came out second half in their cutoff T-shirts and were kneeling down because I was selling Cokes that year in the stadium. And so I just said, well, Coach, we're gonna try to beat y'all. I mean, my 4 years, we're gonna try to beat y'all. How about that? And he was just laughing, but he was a great guy. He handled it great. He took, he even called back my house later that day and just said, I just want to reach out and talk to Kurt, talk to my dad, and Ken Donahue then talked to us, So it was just they were class act from the get-go. But I was really thankful that Watson Brown stayed with it and gave me an opportunity to play for Vanderbilt in black and gold.
That's awesome. And we're going to get to that 84 game in just a minute.
Okay.
But that's such a great story. I wonder if people know that you signed that partial football and track scholarship outside. I wonder if any of the guys watching on this call tonight actually knew that and knew your history of how close you were and how much y'all admired Coach Brian, as we all did, and the Alabama program back then.
Right.
But that's such an awesome story. What great memories that you've got that you shared. But I know that in your recruiting class, you weren't the only quarterback who was signed that year. In fact, I think there were at least 2 others, weren't there?
Absolutely. Rufus Ardell Fuller was a quarterback from Gaffney, South Carolina. He was an outstanding option quarterback and had great skills doing that. And then Bob Capobianco, he was a quarterback, and he had the luxury of in high school to throw to Chuck Scott. So he was outstanding. They were from Orlando, Florida, and it was great. We got in there, and they was just super. But we just we decided whoever. We'll work through the coaches get to pick, and you just go out every day and do your best. And that's what we did. And it ends up being during the time when I was there, Capobianco became an H-back, a running back, and had great skills, knew how to get open. And also Rufus Ardell Fuller, he ended up being one of my top receivers. He had great skills. What happened to him a couple of times is he had shoulder injuries. And it seemed like every off season he was getting the one shoulder. He kept having shoulder injuries, but he played all 4 years, outstanding player, made a lot of big catches and did a lot of good things. So they ended up finding other positions, and I was just fortunate that I was chosen to be the quarterback.
Well, there was a lot of talent at those skill positions. You mentioned Chuck Scott. There was Alma Matthew. I mean, so many guys who were able to catch the ball and do some good things. And then Chuck's son played later on for Vanderbilt. Right. But at that time, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but Whit Taylor was what they call QB1 now. It was his show at the time that you signed. And talk a little bit about that dynamics, that friendship, if you had one.
It started the day I signed, May 29th. I went over there the next day, and I became my dad said, that guy's a really good quarterback, and you'd be like his caddy. You'd be around him all the time. And so what I ended up doing was that summer, we had EJ Doc Crease was our string coach. And so he immediately got me in there. I got with the group and started working out. And I was a local guy, so I could go as much as I could go. Some guys were coming from out of state. Maybe they came second semester or some came first semester. Some did both. But I was already there. So what I ended up doing every day that Whit was in there early watching film, breaking down film. He taught me how to watch film, how to break down film, what you're looking at, where your eyes should go, where your head should go on all, your 3-step, your 5-step, your play action. And so I ended up just being his backup for 2 years and really getting an opportunity to learn from him. And, he was a guy that maximized his abilities. It was fun watching him play and be part of that team that went to the Hall of Fame Bowl in '82. And so it was just great to be in that program with him. And then I got a chance to be a starting quarterback my last 2 years.
That when you first came in, you had, tell me if the timing is correct, was Watson the offensive coordinator those first 2 years you were there?
Yeah. Coach Brown had run, like I mentioned earlier, he had run the offense at Austin Peay, which was just high scoring, a lot of motions, motion from doubles to trips and back to trips. And, basically the SEC had never seen this, back then we had Herschel Walker, we had Charles Alexander from LSU. It was just a running league. And, Spurrier was not there yet. He was over at Duke. And so Coach Brown brought that in, and we could spread people out, and it was great. It was a great offense. We were doing things that had not been seen in the SEC. West Coast they got a lot of, now I look back on, they got a lot of stuff from like BYU, Lavelle Edwards, a lot of the mesh routes, a lot of the underneath stuff, and a lot of stuff that helps guys get open that are smart and learn how to read defenses. But yeah, he was the offensive coordinator for 2 years. And so when I got there, actually, I was on the depth chart. I was like 7th string. And so I called my dad, and he said, "Don't worry about it. You just do your best every day. Do your best every day." He's very, very encouraging. And so ends up Van Heflin was a returning quarterback, and he's such an outstanding athlete. So they ended up moving him, and he was highlighted as a running back. And then, like I said, I think it's Mark Brown was one of the quarterbacks that moved him DB, and then Capo Bianco and Fuller, they were ahead of me, but ended up being 7th string and just worked myself into an opportunity to travel and play. I'd never flown on an airplane. So my goal was to make the travel squad as a freshman and fly on an airplane. And I'd never been to a beach. My goal was to get to the beach. I love the beach. I've read about it and dreamed about it. And so it happened. We played the University of Miami. Coach McIntyre is he's an alumni. So somehow or another, they got us a game with them. And so I got my 2 wishes right there. So my freshman year, we flew in the plane. It was just incredible. And then we played at Miami Beach. Actually, Coach Brown had our meeting on the beach. And as quarterbacks, at night, all the guys remember, you get there, you go see a movie, and then at nighttime you go position groups, and you go over your game plan. And so he did ours down at the beach. It was really, really fun. And he was just out. He was outstanding to play for. And then I got to see one of my idols that I've watched as a quarterback, Earl Morrell. He was a quarterback coach for Schellenberger. That was the head coach at Miami. And I got to play against some guys, pretty good quarterback, Jim Kelly. They had us 49-0. When I got to play, I got in there. And I actually got 2 touchdowns. I threw 2 touchdowns. I was probably against the JV team or something. I don't know who they had. But it was 49-0. But I did get to throw 2 touchdowns. It was a highlight. And it was fun to get in. Because whenever you get to play as a backup, at any position, you just, you practice just as much as everybody else. And you just want to get out there, and show the coaches that, they're putting value and they're pouring into you, and then that you can return that favor.
Well, leading into that freshman year, you'd played at Father Ryan, you'd played in the state championship game, which I'm sure was a big crowd, probably maybe the biggest crowd you'd played with or in front of from a high school standpoint. What was it like being on the sidelines and warming up before your very first game? Even though you were a backup, you're in a huge stadium. Tell us what was going in your mind at that time?
My number one thing, I just told Whit, do not get hurt. Rufus, Ardell Fuller, we had, Coach Brown had a system where we would alternate, and because we were like a 2A and 2B as backups. And so we were telling Whit, just stay healthy, man. Every game, just stay healthy, because we wanted to play, but we knew that he knew all the offense. He could direct the offense. He knew just as much as the coaches did. And so when he did get hurt a few games he always got hurt against Georgia, Alabama, or LSU or Florida. I played against Bubba Marshall, John Hand, Cornelius, Bennett, Biscuit. I played against all these guys because a couple games, back then concussions, it was different, and we suffered a couple of those that season. And nowadays, we probably would have handled it much different. But I got to play, and so did Rufus Ardell Fuller. He got to play quarterback too.
Well, that first year, the fall of 81, that season, the team went 4-7-1. Didn't make a bowl game, but toward the end of the season, did you see enough either then or into the spring with the idea, hey, we may have something pretty special in 82? Because clearly that was an 8-4 bowl game season, was a special year. What was it about that team and leading in, maybe the leadership or the athleticism? What did you see? What was going on?
Well, absolutely. We had great leaders. Our punter was Jim Arnold, and he ended up being a legendary NFL guy, but he was a great leader. He would keep us cool and relaxed as a leader. Norman Jordan was a little H-back. and was just great leader. And it was one of those things. Everybody was pulling for everybody. And it didn't matter if you was a backup. Didn't matter if you third string. If you were just a guy in practice. We had Gary Gerson. We had some guys in practice that gave a great look every day of practice, and it was a team that it was my favorite team to ever be a part of as a player, no doubt. Just to see the guys, the defense would love on the offense. There were games that we were able to not play as well offensively. Our games we did play well in the defense. So it was a lot of just care. We were really caring for each other, and they would holler at us. We'll get the ball right back. Don't worry about it. Defensively, when we had some struggles against some great offensive teams, we'll say we're going to hold on the ball and drive it down. But there was a lot of that communication, and it was awesome. We had so many seniors and guys that had played, at a high level for, like Coach Brown was saying, we had Whit Taylor. This was his 5th year in college. Norman Jordan. So we had some guys that had experience. And you win with experience, obviously, in the SEC. And whenever you got to go with that's always was the thing for us. I felt that the backups most of the time were freshmen, or sophomores. We really didn't have juniors, redshirt juniors as backups, most. And so that was always hindered us somewhat at Vanderbilt.
It's so interesting you say that with that team, because when Jim and I had a discussion a few weeks ago, that's the exact same way he described his experience with that team. It was just, there wasn't a lot of prima donna. There wasn't a lot of me, showboating. It was a real team effort. You guys knocked off that dreaded team from Knoxville that year. So that was a special game. And then do you remember getting the invitation to the bowl game and somewhat of a celebration, I guess, amongst the teammates?
Yeah, it was outstanding. We at first we had thought we were going to get to play Stanford and John Elway, and that was the game where the California Bears band broke loose and scored. So that knocked them out of the bowl game, and so we were really kind of disappointed. But then here comes our bowl bid, and the guys just did a great job. We got a chance to go to Birmingham, play against the Air Force Academy. They were running that offense like they run now. And it was really, really hard to stop. And it was a tough game, but we hung with them, and it was really good experience. And, they had laid the foundation for good things to come.
That would have been pretty cool to see John Elway and Whit Taylor match up against.
Yes. Yeah, we were looking forward to that.
Yeah. Well, I know Watson left for Cincinnati at the end of the '82 season. All those guys graduate. It's now your team. So leading into '83, what were your thoughts, your expectations? Because I know it was a struggle of a season on the scoreboard, but talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, it was disappointing for the record, but we had some outstanding games and outstanding plays, and really a lot of players that really, really played hard. We were first. A lot of us are first-year starters in the SEC, and so when you don't have that experience, it's hard to get things done. And like I said, the backups, we had some good recruits, but back then we ended up signing, I think it was 7 junior college guys from California. Some of them are my dearest friends now: Chris Gutierrez, Joe Kelly, Rick Risser, Jim Drawley. There's a lot of guys that just come to my mind that came to us, and they had experience, but they hadn't had the experience in the SEC. So that was the point. We went 2-9. We were very competitive in a lot of games. We just could not get over the hump. We almost could beat. We were right there to beating Reggie White and University of Tennessee at Tennessee. I threw a pass, and Keith Edwards to this day swears his feet were in. And they'd already waved him out before he even caught the ball, and so that would have put us ahead. Obviously with the extra point, and we had a guy, Ricky Anderson. We were going to make that extra point, and we could have beat them. We ended up losing 34-28. We'd have beat them 35-34, and that really would have jump-started our season in '84. But we knew we were right there, and we knew we needed experience. We had local talent. We had Carl Woods had signed and was playing. Arnez Perry from Gallatin, he had signed. He was playing, and just a lot of guys that were on our team that had been local guys, and they bled that black and gold. So it was fun that they were in there playing. and Doc Crease was working hard, giving us all the best, that he could give us as far as teaching us how to lift weights and do those type of things. So it was exciting. It was just, disappointing that we didn't win more games.
Well, I was going to say the scoreboard really didn't reflect the type of season that you guys had. And I know that you personally, if I have this correctly, I think you were the first quarterback in SEC history to throw for over 3,000 yards in a one season. I think you were second in the nation, maybe to Steve Young that year with yards. So from a personal standpoint, you set a lot of records and you had a lot of accomplishments. But it really wasn't until the next season, the beginning of the '84 season, that a lot of those things came together, particularly in the first half of the season. Right. So going into that fall camp, on the scoreboard, 2-9 is not great. We all know that. But you had a lot of talent coming back. You now had a full year's experience, plus playing some in your freshman year, some in your sophomore. You had a lot of game experience at the helm. Right. But going into that '84 season, let's talk about that now. That's your senior year. Coach Mack is still the head coach. You've got some talent around you. So what were your expectations? What were your thoughts going into your senior year?
Well, we thought we were primed to be that team to win 7, 8, 9 ball games like we had done in '82. Because we had the offensive line. I had Will Wolford that played years in the NFL, Rob Monaco, Bill Fletcher, my center, and Daryl Denson and Daryl Holt. So we had a lot of guys that had experience up front. And like I said, we had some great receivers, Chuck Scott, Keith Edwards, Arnez Perry, Rufus Ardell Fuller, Joe Kelly. So we had a lot of guys. We had a lot of weapons. And then defensively, we had some great players there. Jeff Holt, Chris Gaines, Carl Chocolate Thunder, Jordan. He was one of my roommates at times, and he was an outstanding player. He was a great offensive center. I was sad when they moved him over, but he really hit havoc from Huntsville, Alabama. And, so we had some really good players, and we did start really, really good that year. We beat Frank Reich, the quarterback. He's one of the coaches now in the NFL, played in Buffalo many years. And then he was at Maryland. We beat those guys on the road, and we had some outstanding games. Beat Kansas State. And then we beat Alabama. And I'll never forget when I got off the plane, my dad was there, a crowd was there, and talked to him. He said, why are you walking around like, you're not as happy as everybody else? I said, Dad, we won the battle, but we're going to lose the war. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, my strong safety, Jeff Holt, blew out his ankle. Gaines is hurt. 2 of my linemen, they're out for the season, and it was just, they just basically beat us to a pulp. That we beat Alabama, but we lost, we won that battle, but we lost the war the whole season. We lost those guys. So now we had to play guys that were young and inexperienced and freshmen, and it was hard to do that. And, that was the thing. We never really had much depth. Ernie Gooseby, one of our running backs, he got hurt his shoulder. He never was the same that season. So, it was just disappointing.
Well, I want to tell you from a personal standpoint, I was in the stands that day. I was a 16-year-old, and I had grown up an Alabama fan, had no clue that 2 years later, a lot of those guys on that roster would be my teammates.
Yes.
When I saw Mark Wohlers and a couple of those defensive players, maybe Armando Fitz, I can't remember who all was involved, made a great defensive goal line stand.
Right.
I was so disappointed. That was my team.
Yeah.
You guys snapped a long homecoming streak.
Right.
That game, you would have I could have bet you all the money in the world I was not going to Vanderbilt.
Oh,
I was watching that game.
Yeah, I got you.
But looking back, for years, I've had so much pride in what a great game that was. And for you to be on the field that day and leading the team on the offense, that was just a day that's probably considered one of the better games, probably in the school's program, certainly in the last 50 years. But it's always, for the Bama fans in my world around me, that's still a sore subject.
Yeah, but no, I've got to watch myself here in Greenville, Alabama. We got a lot of Alabama folks, Roll Tide, and they give it to me all the time. And I don't try to rub it in at all. When Auburn and Alabama were playing, I just made sure I was wearing some black and gold. I wasn't going to pick one or the other. And it's a strong rivalry down here. And most of the people know that I played quarterback and know that season we had a big win against Alabama. But, I definitely don't rub it in. And it was so much fun as a player and to reminisce about a lot of guys I got to play with that game. And you mentioned a lot of guys on defense there that were outstanding players. We had just an outstanding group of guys that really played hard. But like I said, that game at Alabama, it was a more physical game, and we ended up losing some guys and had to play some freshmen and redshirt freshmen. It just kind of changed the dynamic of the whole team. And then we came back home, and rightfully so. I don't think we probably handled it very well, being 4-0, top 20, and then Tulane comes in town, and the year before we played them at the Superdome, ended up beating them. And it was, a hard-fought game. They're a similar type school, high academics, a team that's always trying to compete with players that maybe not NFL-driven, but academic-driven and trying to be the best student-athlete they can be. And so it was a very good game. And ends up being their coach was Bob Davies, and I ended up being a grad assistant at Texas A&M, and he was the linebackers coach. And so he always talked to me. I derailed John's team that season. I said, man, come on, quit bugging me about that. I was there as a grad assistant for 2 years, but he's a great guy, and he's done just an outstanding job. Was a great commentator at ESPN, and I think he went back to coaching. He coached at Notre Dame, and he coached New Mexico State. So he's a great guy.
It is amazing in the college football world and in the pro football world. I'm learning that the guys who you're competing with or against later on may be coaching with you or on your same team, depending on your circumstances. So you never know where you're going to come across those guys again.
Exactly.
But Kurt, I want to welcome a few other guys on here that you may recognize: Ed Parrish, Sean Verner, Dwayne Jones, Corey Harris, DC Crosby, a whole bunch of folks. A couple of comments for you. Sean says he loved watching Coach Page play and then coach at BGA. We'll get to BGA in just a minute. And let's see. Yeah, Mark Wohler was a hard hitter. He was there my last 2 years.
Absolutely.
I did not appreciate getting hit by him when I was on the scout team. But that season, it ended up not being a bowl season. It was a 5-6 team because, like you said, a lot of guys were forced to play, probably were not designed to play that year, but because of injuries and circumstances, ended up playing a lot. And tell us, what was it? You're going into the final couple of games of the year, ultimately culminating with Tennessee, of course. What was in your thoughts about beyond, or had you even thought about beyond Vanderbilt and playing?
Actually, my whole focus was graduating, and getting a chance to continue playing at some level. I didn't know what level I was going to get a chance to play at, but I wanted to make sure I was going to graduate in 4 years. I was able to do that. But back then it was real different. It was, we all stayed in school through the spring. There was no going and training off campus for the combines. I didn't get invited to the combine. And so I had some workouts for like the New York Giants and the LA Rams, were the Rams back then. And then I ended up working out for Calgary Stampeders and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. I ended up getting picked by the Calgary Stampeders, a guy named Bud Riley, an Alabama guy. He was a general manager. He ended up picking me, so I had a chance to go up there for a season and code. But I always kind of wanted to be a coach, and I thought I just loved to be a coach. And I just admired Coach Watson Brown so much. And then my offensive coordinator, Lynn Amity, he came in my junior, senior year, and I was able to work with him at Texas A&M. And I just admired all the coaches. One of my favorite coaches was my very first quarterbacks coach, David Culley. He was from Sparta, Tennessee. He's the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver coach right now. And I talk to him all the time and love him. And he was the first guy that in practice, he said, Paige, you can play at this level. You have to have the mindset every day to practice. And he ended up working with us all summer. And then he landed a coaching job in the NFL that season. So he left. He was from Sparta, White County. He was a Vanderbilt graduate, was a long-time backup to Fred Fisher. but was a student of the game, and he still is. He's a great coach, Fellowship Christian Athletes guy. I took my Hillwood football team to Cookeville, Tennessee for 7-on-7 and really tried to, have our guys have a neat experience being a Title I school. A lot of guys have never been out of North Nashville, and so it was great to take them and end up being, how God works. David Culley was the guest speaker for that whole organization. He had no idea I was at Hillwood, and I had no idea he was going to be there. When he walked into the locker room, we spotted each other, and we both just started crying. I mean, it was just like,
Wow.
remember. And so we hugged, and all my players, I had a lot of African-American guys. We're, probably 85, 87% African-American Hillwood. So they all were looking, they were like, what's he going over hugging that black guy? Why is he crying? What's going on? What's going on? They were at my back, they were like, are you all right, coach? I said, all right, man, this is one of my favorite. This guy believed in me, man. This is a guy, if I ever got on the field, for practice, he believed in me. And so, so he poured into me, but he's a great guy there, David Culley.
Oh, what a great memory. And for those of you who are really entrenched in our program, Sparta, Tennessee is the hometown of Spike Johnson and Tim Richardson, who are in between our years at Vanderbilt. And what great memories. But before we get to the CFL and then getting on to coaching and teaching in high school, you got to play after your senior year in a couple of all-star games. I want you to share with the folks, who'd you get to throw touchdown passes to in one of those games?
Oh man, I thought I was really good. I got to play in the blue game. It used to play on Christmas Day, and so our very first practice, Chuck Scott, my wide receiver, was in the game, and so we were working out together with this guy from itty bitty Mississippi, wearing number 88. Just a frail-looking guy but quick. He was already out there on the practice field, and then all through practice, he ran the most crisp routes. His hustle, his determination was not being denied. I mean, he's a guy from Mississippi Valley State. His name was Jerry Rice. And he told me, he said, KP, I said, what's up? He said, back then they would just call routes like, right pro, all curl, right pro, all out, right pro, all go, that type of thing. And he said, let me tell you something. If it's all curl and I'm going to beat the guy, I'm going to stick my hand up and you throw me the ball. And I said, all right, I got you, partner. So we were alternating in the quarterback with other quarterbacks. So when I got in there, they called all curl, and sure enough, I saw his hand go up, and I just launched it, and he ended up. It wasn't probably a good pass. He just adjusted, and made the play. But I'd called my dad and told him, I said, Dad, I'm practicing with the best player I've ever seen in my life in person. He said, oh, who is that? And I told him, it's a guy named Jerry Rice. Where did he play? He didn't play Ole Miss, Mississippi. He played Mississippi Valley for Archie Cooley. And, man, he was just incredible. But it was so fun to play with him. And I got to some of our coaches were Ray Perkins. That was very, very neat to play with that guy. He was an Alabama guy. And then Ricky Moore was a running back. Ricky Anderson from our team played with us. It was really fun. Bruce Smith, that's who I roomed with from Virginia Tech. Wow. All sack guys. I'm probably pretty famous because I'm on a lot of Reggie White film. Being when he set the record, my sons are all see that. I say, here come, Dad. You're gonna be on TV again.
Yeah, it's gonna feel real good, Dad.
He was a great guy too, man. Minister of Defense. Take a quick story about that. This past summer, we went to Wisconsin. I went for Chicago, Illinois, for a situational leadership conference, and ended up finishing that up. And my son. Hale was over at a neighboring college about an hour away, so they all came to Chicago, and so we went north. And they were like, "Where are we going, Dad?" I said, "We need to go north to Notre Dame or north to Green Bay Packers, Lambeau Field." And Hale said, "Dad, you probably want to go to Lambeau Field." I said, "Yeah, that's the home of Reggie White, the Minister of Defense." And he's like, "Okay." So we rolled up there and had a great time. It was super cold. It was like November. I mean, super cold. Snow's on the ground, ice. I got to see guys doing ice fishing. They were like, "Dad, what are you doing?" I was out there. I didn't do the ice fishing, but I went out there to check it out. See, they were just great. Well, we end up. I got sued. We went to the Green Bay Packers, and my son Nicholas. He ended up. I got him a shirt, a hat, and Hale, I got him a shirt and a hat. And I just wanted something from Reggie White. Well, they really didn't have anything. I said, okay. So we're on the way back to Chicago, and I always love stopping in Goodwill stores. I just love that. So here we go. And it was a God thing, it had to be a God thing. We stop in that store. I go in there. My favorite hat is a Reggie White Foundation. It's number 92. Inside it says Minister of Defense. And I wear that all the time around our campus, whenever I'm outside. And so I bought one hat, I think it was like $3. Mm-hmm. And my boys, they were like, Dad, I said, that's all I had to ask for. I said, I asked for, I just want stuff. I want something from Reggie White to always have. Mm-hmm. So I had a hat, and it was his foundation. He had signed those hats. I'm sure it was a photocopy of type of thing, but it was great to get that souvenir.
Oh, wow. Such awesome memories, such great stories. I used to go to the Blue-Gray game. I was from Dothan. That's where I grew up, an hour and a half south of Montgomery. And all through the 80s, I saw you play. I saw my teammates, John Gromos and Chris Gaines. In fact, Chris Gaines was the MVP on the defense his senior year. He holds up the huge trophy. The entire trophy crumbles because it was poorly made. Oh, and the look on Chris's face is like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? But anyway, I also know you played in the same game. I don't know if it was that one or another one with Dan Marino and Randall Cunningham. I think were the same years.
That was out west. I absolutely played in Palo Alto, California, about a week later in the East-West Shrine game. I'd only been invited to the Blue-Gray game, and I guess when I tossed a couple of touchdown passes, my name must have rose up or something, or somebody got hurt and didn't want to go. So I got 2 invites, actually. I got invited to Japan Bowl, and that's where Chuck Scott was going to go, and he was going, and I got to East-West Shrine. I got to East-West Shrine early in the morning. Coach McIntyre came down to the dorm, said, you got this, need to accept this bid and get back on a plane, get out there. And then about an hour later, Japan called, and I said, Coach Mag, he said, no, you already committed to East-West Shrine. I was like, yes, sir. But Chuck Scott's going to Japan. But so anyway, I played. Randall Cunningham was a great quarterback. He was on the other squad. And then Dan Marino. We had a lot of NFL guys. That was a really, probably that had the most of the marquee players. Jerry Rice obviously didn't get to go in that game, but he'd already shown everybody his abilities. And but it was a lot of fun to play out there in that environment and play, and met a lot of guys that are still are legends in the NFL.
Well, I know those were awesome experiences for you, and you did yourself well by getting to those games and getting to play. And I know you played briefly a couple of seasons in the CFL before you headed into your current career. And I know a lot of folks kind of maybe had lost you because you were now out of the public eye because you weren't on a professional team. But share with us a little bit about your coaching and teaching experience, because I know you went back to the Nashville area for quite a while and eventually landed in Greenville, where you are now.
Yes, well, I got a chance to play in the Canadian Football League. And so after my first season, my offensive coordinator at Vanderbilt was Lynn Amity. Well, he became the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M. And he said, Kurt, what are you going to do for training and that type of thing, and it was hodgepodge back then. They didn't have personal trainers. They didn't have quarterback coaches. And so I said, Coach, can I come down there? He says, you can come down here. And so he ended up setting me up in an apartment. I was above apartment, and the guy that I had watched, I was working out with was a guy named Kevin Murray, and that's Kyler Murray's dad. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up working out with him that whole spring, and then I got the USFL folded. So the USFL folded. Well, then all those quarterbacks from USFL they ended up moving to the Canadian League. And so I got waived, and I got picked up by Ottawa. And I went out there for like a week, and I just told Coach Amity, I said, they were telling me, you're going to get traded to Saskatchewan. I was like, Coach Amity, can I come back? I want to be a coach. He said, Coach Sherrill, he's already said you can come back whenever you want to. Well, I got to hang out with a guy, too. I've been blessed, a guy named J.C. Watts, the senator from Oklahoma. And he was the quarterback for Ottawa Rough Riders.
He was a pretty good player back in the day, too.
Watched him, it was just like, we ran the run and shoot. Mouse Davis was one of the offensive coordinators. So I got to see that, exposed to that as a quarterback. So anyway, I flew back to College Station, Texas. Coach Sherrill got me back there. And what a great guy. And just my 2 years there were incredible. Ended up getting married my second year there. My longtime high school sweetheart. And so she had finished up at Middle Tennessee as a 3-time cheerleader there. So we had just great opportunities to do great things. And at Texas A&M, we won the Southwest Conference championships 2 years in a row. and was outstanding. So we ended up beating Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl. Lou Holtz was the coach, and beating those guys. It was a lot of fun. And then I got a coaching job at Livingston University, which is now West Alabama. One of our tight ends coaches at Vanderbilt was Sam McCorkle, and he ended up being the head coach there a couple of years. So anyway, I got a job to work with him or for him there. And boy, it was hard, man. High school, I was built for high school. The college game was hard as a young guy, being young, being married, and trying to start a family and be, dependable there. You're gone a whole lot. So I have a lot of respect for these college coaches. They're gone from their families. But now you see a lot of coaches that they work it in where their families are at practice, their families are at the dining hall, and they see their families. And, you end up. So anyway, I coached for 1 year. We were 0-11. So I had a rough time. I just couldn't. We were better than that, and we ended up losing some weird ways. We lost some games. Well, then my dad used to get a haircut from Jim Wagner, Jim's barbershop right down from Vanderbilt. And he said, Ralph Brown comes in here. He's a legendary guy from Vanderbilt and was Battleground Academy, alumnus and also board member, might have been chairman of the board then. He said, well, our coach is retiring, he's going in the insurance business. My dad's in there getting a haircut. He said, I got a son that wants to coach. And so Ralph came over, well, who is that? You tell him to call me, right? So he gave me the phone number, called me, I called him, and I came up for an interview. I was recruiting a couple of guys from Franklin Road Academy, quarterback and receiver. A couple of my dear friends growing up were David Tucker. His family grew up in Cookeville, and his dad knew my dad, and his uncle knew my dad really well. So this how God works. So ended up coming for the recruiting those guys. Well, then I go by Battleground Academy and get to meet Ralph Brown. And so met him and met the administrators at BGA and just fell in love with that place, And they had been really, really bad. It's just, just morale was down and numbers were down. And it was exciting the opportunity to go there, be a young coach. We ended up doing really well. We started off 1-9, and every year we built better. Built better squads and got better in the weight room, and was really, really blessed. I had O.J. Fleming, one of my favorite guys of all time. He was one of my wide receivers, big number 88, and then one of our running backs was Jason Donovan, number 42. He was outstanding. Our quarterback was Matt McAfee, signed with Chattanooga. Those first two guys signed with Vanderbilt. And I was so proud to watch those guys, matriculate through that program and do great things. And one of our fullbacks was Bob Freeman. I think he's one of the politicians now in Nashville. His dad is world famous. Loved his dad. We had a kicker, Will Sweeney, that had a boating accident, but ended up being an all-state kicker and was an outstanding performer for us. And we had Scott Perkinson, that was a defensive end. He set the power clean record for University of Tennessee. He was a track athlete for University of Tennessee, and for a long time, he was the strongest guy in the power clean. That was one of the lifts that we were taught from Doc Crease, and I took that with me wherever I've been and still do.
Well, I'm really surprised O.J. Fleming's not live with us tonight. He usually tunes in, and he'll be happy to know that you were on tonight and gave him a shout out. How long were you at BGA before you made your next move?
Well, I was there for 4 seasons and had a great opportunity. Like I said, back then there was no social media, no cell phones. We were expecting our first child. And so I got home, it was in May, it was the end of May, and we just finished spring football practice, and I was at BGA, and I had a fortune. I was very fortunate. There was a guy named Troy Fleming that was going to be coming to our school. So we were able back then to already bring them in and start working them with our group. And so I had Troy Fleming, going to be a rising 9th grader, and Dr. Eddie Crenson was the principal at Father Ryan. He called my wife, and he was a history teacher for her class at Father Ryan. And he was one of my basketball coaches, and I always just admired him. He said, look, my football job ever opens, I'm going to call you, and you'll get the first shot at it. And so he called me, and, my wife had already talked to Eddie, and she'd always said, we're coming. She's a Father Ryan girl too, alumni. We're coming. I said, so I got in there. I said, honey, I see us winning 2, 3, maybe 4 state championships. At that time, I said, this is the best guy I've ever coached. and he didn't play a lot for Franklin Junior High for Coach Lane for some reason. So I said, he's going to be incredible as a tailback. I mean, incredible. Well, he ends up, anyway, I go to Father Ryan. And so, he ends up being the all-time rusher for state of Tennessee, if you remember right, back in the day. He ended up playing for Tennessee, University of Tennessee. He was a great athlete, but he was at BGA. So the vision that Coach Ralph Brown and a lot of the BGA alumnus and the Board of Trustees had a vision where they used to be. They wanted to move out toward the interstate. And this was very visionary. So they bought this big property and they moved out the whole school out there and ended up building a stadium. And it was McGuffey Stadium. And so I was part of all that building and then the weight room. And then that summer, I moved over to Father Ryan. Well, we had an opening game, BGA, and I had called Father Ryan, Coach Fibash. I said, we'd love to open up our stadium with Father Ryan High School. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. We had makeshift, locker room. It was just, we were under construction. We weren't quite ready. Well, ends up, then June 1st, I've switched over to Father Ryan and go play my team that I practiced, played with for 4 or 5 years. And it was so hard. Gosh, it was the hardest thing. It was the hardest thing I've ever done because, we had memories. We lost the state championship in '92, 10-7 to Oneida. We've been through 1-9. We lost 9 straight games. My first season, we lost 9 and beat one team. That was Tullahoma. We about tore down the goalpost. We're so excited building up that program and going to a new school, new campus. Very, very exciting times. And then I'm going to be the coach to play my old team like in 2 months later. So it was crazy time. It was a crazy time, but we ended up, it was very exciting. I got to go out when they dedicated the field and the stadium. And I told my guys, the father, I said, I've been here, last 4 or 5 years of my life, and I put a lot into it. And, I owe it to myself and my family. I'm going to be out here and, we're going to beat the heck out of them when we start playing football. And so all the Father Ryan guys, they had my back. And so we ended up winning that game. And my quarterback he came with me from BGA, Todd Campbell. And he ended up scoring a touchdown and slamming the ball down, got a penalty. And, he was the first guy to really score a touchdown in that stadium. And he told me, he said, Coach, I know you're going to be mad at me, but I'm either going to dunk the basketball over the goalpost, or I'm going to slam. I said, that's all right. I said, if you get 15 yards, that's 15 whompies. That's 15. You're going to serve. Do the crime, do the time. So
sometimes it's worth it.
It just electrified our people. And he was a young guy. He was an underclassman as a quarterback, and he had transferred over. And I just, he ended up beating out some guys that were there, and he was an outstanding player. And he was the quarterback that we won the state championship at Father Ryan in '97. And so his family, great supporters of myself and great supporters of their school. And I talked to their sons, his brothers all the time. They're in coaching in Chattanooga. I have a lot of guys that played for me or relationships that are in coaching. And that's very rewarding as a teacher and a coach at high school level to get guys that want to go do what you did.
Mentoring a lot of young men, and I'm sure they're very thankful. But 2 of whom I think their ears must have been burning. OJ Fleming just joined us and says, "Hey, Coach," and the man with the golden leg, Jim Arnold, says,
"Oh yeah, I miss Jim Arnold. When I lived in Nashville the last 5 years, I'd get to see him at a couple of the restaurants and out there in West Nashville or Franklin, that area. So he's a great guy."
Well, thank you guys for both tuning in, and of course, we're talking with Kurt Page, and we're getting close toward the end. Kurt, I appreciate your time and sharing all these awesome memories and stories with us. It's been a great trip down memory lane, learning things. I hope that this has been an okay time for you and to share some of those stories with us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I really do. Everything that I've received since I was at Vanderbilt, I owe everything back to Vanderbilt. They took a chance on me. They signed me. I was just honored to play for them. And every time, I always like being introduced as a Vanderbilt University graduate. And right now I'm working. I got my master's degree from Texas A&M a few years back in 1988. And then now I'm about to graduate from Tribeca Nazarene University with a doctoral degree in education. And that was a big goal of mine. And I wanted to be able to do that. And Also, I'm writing a book on emotional intelligence. My research was done with the Tennessee Football Coaches Association. There's 200 of those coaches. And so I did research with those guys and sent them surveys and interviewed them. And basically I had 200 coaches that we sent it to, and 160 of them responded. It was incredible. That's 80%. And so to do research, being a scientist, that was really outstanding. But my dissertation is emotional intelligence, coaching efficacy, behaviors, and staff cohesion from the perspectives of high school football coach. So we really got a lot of information. We have a lot. I'm gonna write a book about emotional intelligence, and just looking forward to getting that going from this research.
Well, I think Dr. Page has a nice ring to it after you get through.
It. I'm looking forward to that.
Before I let you get out of here, I'm going to give you I've been doing this, a couple of rapid fire questions, jogging your memory a little bit. Where did you live your freshman year at Vanderbilt?
Carmichael Towers.
One of the towers.
Yeah.
What was your favorite place to go get a burger and something to drink around or near campus?
Crystal, right across the street. Crystal, we love Crystals. I love to go there all the time.
Where was one of your favorite hangout spots around campus?
Jonesy's right there where Wendy's is now. Love that place, playing indoor bowling, that type of thing was great. Love to get my guys out of there sometimes too, out of harm's way.
What day of the week was your favorite during the season?
I had to be Saturday. I just love Saturdays. You practice, you train so hard all the other days of the week and get an opportunity to perform. And that was such a great day to be a part of the football team and be a part of those guys Saturday.
What was your favorite thing about spring semester?
Probably the rites of spring, we had over there on campus. Loved that. Joe Kelly, we used to run, have big time. And a lot of our guys, we loved that, all the bands and throwing the Frisbees and hanging out, that was pre-Kenny Chesney, we'd go barefoot, we were no shoe nation, we didn't even know we were then, but that's the way we were old, and it was fun. And riding our bicycles, we were big into bicycles.
Awesome. Do you have any recollections of any favorite classes or professors that you took classes from?
Absolutely. Dr. Anna Lee Ingram, she was at George Peabody College. She gave inspiration to us all the time. Dr. Louise Knowles, they were both ladies that were great teachers, and they taught us how to teach and how to handle adversity, how to handle situations. They were situational leadership, just models. They were great. We loved them over at George Peabody College.
Last question. If I'm a rising athlete and I'm being recruited by Vanderbilt, why would I want to go to school at Vanderbilt and play sports at that school?
Well, you're making a 40-year decision, son. This is not a 4-year decision. This is a 40-year decision. You can look at my case. I have alumni friends. I have people connected with Vanderbilt, and they are just incredible people to be associated with. This is not a 4-year decision. This is a 40-year decision. So when you're like my age, 56, you're going to have an opportunity to have great, cohorts and fellowship with guys that are doing great things. And you'll be one of those guys as well doing great things, because this is a launching pad. Vanderbilt University can help you get wherever you want to get in your life. I'm
ready to sign again. Thank you.
Let's go.
Oh, what a fun hour. Thank you, Kurt, for sharing all of your stories and your experiences with us this evening.
You're most welcome. I'm just really blessed and fortunate and grateful, really, to be a Black and Gold member all my life, a Commodore for life. So I'm looking forward to just passing that on and just really, I appreciate what you're doing, connecting us Commodores with the conversations. And I love watching them, and I love going back and hearing, Corey Harris. I'm so looking forward to hearing about Watson Brown. Just loved him too. Next week.
Guys, as Kurt just told you, we think we've got Coach Brown next week, next Thursday. We're assuming we'll get Zoom under control with him, but I'm going to test that with him. But as always, thank you guys who are participating. Awesome comments, awesome participation. That's right. Anchor down, guys. Be safe. We're going to get through this. We're going to come out of this pretty soon, hopefully, but just be smart wherever you are. Guys, have a great rest of your night and weekend. Thank you, Kurt. Y'all be well.
Bye-bye.